The night I was rushed to the ICU, my ex-husband's wife was dying 3 floors above me. I didn't know that then. All I knew was the taste of copper in my mouth and the violent screech of ambulance sirens tearing through the storm. Rain hammered the windshield like 1,000 angry fists. Someone was shouting my name, but their voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. My vision blurred at the edges, narrowing to a pinpoint of light that flickered and threatened to go out completely. "Stay with us, ma'am. Stay with us." But I was already somewhere else. Somewhere warm and golden, where the smell of cheap instant noodles mixed with the scent of fresh paint and hope. 7 years ago, Adrian and I lived in a studio apartment, so small you could touch both walls if you stretched out your arms. We didn't care. We had blueprints spread across the floor and dreams bigger than the cramped space could contain. He'd sketch building designs while I organized budgets on spreadsheets. Both of us surviving on $3 meals and the kind of love that burns so bright you don't notice when it starts consuming you. One day, he'd say, pointing at his drawings, "We're going to build something that matters." And I believed him. God, I believed every word. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you still loved, hit that like button. Someone else might need your courage today. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The years blurred together after that. His architecture firm took off. Meetings stretched into midnights. Phone calls replaced conversations. The man who used to notice when I changed my hair started coming home smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. I'd watch him sleep and wonder when exactly we'd become strangers sharing a bed. I never confronted him. Maybe I should have. Maybe I was a coward. But there's something about loving someone that makes you willing to pretend you don't see the truth, even when it's staring you right in the face. The night I left, I didn't pack much, just enough to fit in one suitcase. I folded his jacket, the one that still carried traces of someone else's scent, and placed it on the bed with a single note beside it. You don't have to explain. For words. That's all it took to end 6 years of marriage. I didn't slam doors or throw his clothes out the window like they do in movies. I just walked out quietly at dawn, before he woke up, before I could change my mind. The sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. He didn't call. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. And somehow, that hurt worse than any fight we could have had. The ambulance hit a pothole, jerking me back to the present. The paramedic's face swam in a focus above me, her expression tight with concern. My chest felt like someone had parked a truck on it. "We're almost there," she said. "Just hold on." But I didn't know if I wanted to hold on. I didn't know if there was anything left worth holding on for. He didn't chase me, but destiny would. What will happen when Alara wakes up in the same hospital as her ex-husband? Comment, keep going if you want to find out. I left more than a marriage that morning. I left the woman I'd become for him. The coastal town I moved to was nothing like the city we'd shared. No glass towers scraping the sky. No fancy restaurants where a single meal cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Just salt air, weathered docks, and people who didn't care that I'd once been Mrs. Adrian Crane. I rented a cottage with peeling blue paint and windows that rattled when the wind picked up. It was perfect. For the first time in years, I painted. Not walls or furniture like I used to do to keep our apartment homey on a tight budget. Real painting. Canvas and oils and colors that had names like Burnt Sienna and Cerulean Dream. My hands remembered what my heart had forgotten. The local community center needed help. Their art program for kids was dying from lack of funding and interest. I volunteered one afternoon and never left. Those children, with their gap-toothed smiles and paint-splattered clothes, they saw me. Really saw me. Not as someone's wife or someone's failure. Just Alara. 6 months in, I pitched an idea to the town council. An art therapy center for children dealing with trauma. Kids who'd lost parents, survived abuse, watched their worlds crumble. I knew that pain. I could help them paint their way through it. They said yes. I didn't just walk away from Adrian. I walked towards something that mattered. Meanwhile, 300 miles north, my ex-husband was building a different kind of life. I knew because my old college roommate couldn't help sending me the magazine clippings. Society pages, charity galas, and always her Celeste Montgomery. Old money, older bloodlines. The kind of woman who looked like she'd been born in pearls, and probably had been. She had the life I'd once imagined for myself, standing beside Adrian in perfectly tailored gowns while cameras flashed, and people whose names ended in Roman numerals clinked champagne glasses. The wedding photos made my stomach turn, not because I still loved him, but because of how easy it looked, how perfectly she fit into the world he'd built, the world I'd helped him dream into existence. If you've ever felt replaced by someone who made it look effortless, drop a heart. You're not alone in that pain. I stopped looking at the pictures after a while. Stopped checking his company's website for new projects. Stopped wondering if he ever thought about the girl who used to bring him coffee at 2 in the morning while he sketched and dreamed. 3 years passed like that. Quiet. Productive. Healing. The Arts Center grew. We got grants, donations, recognition. Local news did a story about us. I stood in front of the camera, surrounded by children's artwork, and talked about turning pain into beauty, about giving kids a voice when words weren't enough. I was happy, or something close enough to it that I stopped questioning the difference. But peace has a funny way of being temporary. It lulls you into thinking you've moved on, that the past is dead and buried. Then fate shows up with a shovel and starts digging. I should have known better. Should have remembered that some stories don't end just because you walk away from them. The night of the storm, I was driving back from a fundraiser 2 towns over. The roads were slick, visibility near zero. I saw the truck's headlights too late, heard the crunch of metal, felt the world spin and flip and shatter. Then nothing. When I woke up in the ICU, tubes running from my arms and machines beeping their mechanical symphony, I had no idea that 3 floors above me, another woman was fighting for her life too. And the man caught between us was about to face every mistake he'd ever made. He thought love could be replaced, but the universe had other plans. Comment Part 3, if you're still with me. This is where everything changes. Adrian Crane married Celeste Montgomery exactly 18 months after our divorce was finalized. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I heard about it anyway. Small towns might be quiet, but the internet is loud, and algorithms have a cruel sense of humor. His wedding photos flooded my social media recommendations for weeks. They looked perfect together. Him in a custom tuxedo that probably cost more than my car. Her in a dress that could have funded my art center for a year. The venue was some historic estate with gardens that looked like they'd been manicured by angels with OCD. Everything I wasn't. Everything I could never be. But here's the thing about perfect. It photographs well. It impresses people at parties. It looks beautiful mounted on a wall or printed in magazines. But it doesn't keep you warm at 3 in the morning when you wake up feeling like a stranger in your own skin. At least, that's what I told myself while I scrubbed dried paint from under my fingernails and pretended I didn't care. Celeste was everything a man like Adrian needed for the life he'd built. Connected family. Flawless reputation. The kind of grace that came from generations of finishing schools and cotillions. She could navigate a boardroom or a ballroom with equal ease, always saying the right thing to the right people. I used to burn grilled cheese and accidentally insult his clients by asking too many sincere questions. The photos I try not to look at showed them at charity galas, art gallery openings, corporate dinners. Always touching, his hand on her lower back, her fingers threaded through his, smiling for cameras with practiced ease. Did he touch her the way he used to touch me? Did he remember that I existed at all? If you've ever watched someone build a life with someone else that looks exactly like the one they promised you, comment, I see you. Let's remind each other we survived. I threw myself deeper into work. The children needed me. Every Tuesday and Thursday, kids aged 6 to 16 filled our center with noise and color and the kind of honest emotion that adults spend lifetimes learning to hide. There was Marcus, 10 years old, who'd watched his dad walk out and never come back. He painted exclusively in shades of blue and gray until one day, 6 months in, a tiny spot of yellow appeared in the corner of his canvas. We both cried. There was Sophia, barely 8, who'd survived a house fire that took her baby brother. She drew flames for weeks, then flowers growing from ashes, then just flowers. These kids were teaching me what I'd forgotten, that broken things can heal, that endings make space for beginnings, that you don't need someone else to be whole. I was learning to be enough on my own. 3 years rolled by like that. Seasons changing, children coming and going, grant applications, fundraisers, small victories that felt massive. My cottage by the sea became home in a way that fancy city apartment never had. I stopped checking Adrian's social media, stopped wondering what if, stopped mourning a version of myself that only existed in someone else's orbit. Then came the night that changed everything. 90 days before I'd end up in that hospital bed, the universe set things in motion. I didn't know it then, couldn't have guessed, but somewhere in the city I'd left behind, cracks were forming in that perfect facade. Celeste had started feeling tired. Just little things at first. Shortness of breath, dizzy spells, the kind of symptoms you ignore when you're busy being perfect for everyone watching. Her heart was failing, slowly, quietly, the way some things end when no one's paying attention. And Adrian, the man who'd once sketched dreams on napkins with me, was about to learn that some losses cut deeper than others, that some prices are too high, even for the life you think you want. 3 floors would separate us, 2 women fighting to live, and 1 man about to meet his past head-on. Comment, fate has its timing. If you believe everything happens for a reason. Part 4 is coming, and you won't believe what happens next. The storm hit like divine fury made weather. I'd seen plenty of coastal storms in my 3 years by the sea, but this one felt different. Personal, like nature itself had something to prove. Wind howled through gaps in my cottage walls. Rain attacked the windows and sheets, so thick you couldn't see 3 feet ahead. I should have stayed home. Would have, if the fundraiser hadn't been so important. 3 potential donors, all interested in expanding our art therapy program to neighboring counties. The kind of opportunity you don't reschedule because of bad weather. The meeting ran late, really late. By the time I got back in my car, the storm had escalated from concerning to dangerous. Roads looked like rivers. Trees bent sideways. My windshield wipers couldn't keep up with the deluge. I was maybe 15 minutes from home when I saw the truck. It came out of nowhere. Hydroplaned through a red light, spinning like a toy. I jerked the wheel hard. Too hard. My car lost traction, kissed the guardrail, then decided to flip completely over like it was auditioning for an action movie. The world became a kaleidoscope of breaking glass, crushing metal, and my own screaming. Then silence. Then sirens. Then nothing at all. If you've ever experienced a moment where your whole life changed in a heartbeat, hit like, some seconds rewrite everything. When I opened my eyes, everything hurt. Not sharp pain. Worse. The dull, everywhere kind that means your body took serious damage and is still cataloging the injuries. Fluorescent lights burned my retinas. Machines beeped their rhythmic warnings. Someone in scrubs was adjusting an 4 drip connected to my arm. "Welcome back," a nurse said, her smile tired but genuine. "You gave us quite a scare." I tried to speak. My throat felt like sandpaper. "Don't talk yet," she continued. "You've got 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and internal bruising. But you're lucky. Could have been so much worse." Lucky, right? I drifted in and out after that. Time moved weird. Minutes felt like hours. Hours vanished in blinks. Faces appeared and disappeared. Doctors asking questions I couldn't quite answer. Nurses checking vitals while speaking in soft, practiced tones meant to be comforting. I didn't know that 3 floors above me, in a private suite I couldn't afford in 3 lifetimes, another emergency was unfolding. Celeste had collapsed at a charity gala. 1 minute she was giving a speech about supporting underprivileged youth. The next she was on the floor, lips turning blue, heart rhythm gone haywire. The kind of medical crisis that happens fast and brings entire rooms to a standstill. They rushed her to the same hospital, the closest one, the best cardiac unit in the region. Adrian rode in the ambulance with her, holding her hand, watching her fade, probably feeling the same helpless terror I'd felt in my own ambulance ride hours earlier. 2 emergencies, 1 building, neither of us knowing how close we were to each other. The universe has a twisted sense of humor sometimes. Adrian paced the cardiac ICU waiting room like a caged animal, still wearing his tuxedo from the gala, bow tie undone, hair messed from running his hands through it too many times. His phone kept buzzing with messages from concerned friends, business associates, reporters who'd somehow already gotten wind of the story. He ignored them all. Celeste's parents arrived. Her mother, still elegant even in crisis. Her father, stoic and silent. They hugged Adrian with the kind of formal warmth that old money does so well. Supportive, but controlled. Emotional, but measured. Nothing like my family, who would have been sobbing and praying loudly and probably getting kicked out for making too much noise. The doctors are doing everything they can, Adrian told them, repeating what he'd already been told a dozen times. Words that meant nothing and everything. Down in my wing, I was stable. Boring, medically speaking. No drama. No ruse. Just a woman healing from a car accident, one breath at a time. I didn't know his name was on the visitor registry upstairs. Didn't know he was in the same building. Didn't know that fate was setting up dominoes we'd both spend the next 2 weeks watching fall. 3 floors apart. Both our worlds fracturing. And absolutely no idea we were about to collide again. Drop part 5 in the comments if your heart is racing. Because what happens next will change everything you think you know about this story. The nurse who figured it out first wasn't even supposed to be working my floor. Livia Martinez, 15-year veteran. The kind of nurse who knew everyone's story before they'd finished checking in. She'd been pulled down from cardiac care to help with our overflowing emergency wing. Post-storm chaos, still keeping everyone slammed. She was updating my chart when she noticed something odd in the system. My emergency contact information, old and outdated, still listed from 3 years ago when I first moved to town and hadn't bothered changing the forms at my doctor's office. Under spouse, it read, Adrian Crane. Livia's eyes went wide. She just spent 12 hours upstairs monitoring Adrian Crane's wife. Same last name. Same man. Different woman. She could have said something. Should have maybe. Protocol suggested informing both parties. But Livia had seen enough relationship wreckage to recognize the debris pattern. Ex-wife downstairs. Current wife upstairs. Man in the middle looking like his soul was being wrung out. This was a mess nobody needed to wade into right now. So she said nothing, just made a mental note, and kept moving. Sometimes silence is the kindest option. I spent most of that first day drifting in and out of medicated sleep, dreams tangled with memories. Adrian's face kept appearing, younger, softer, back when we were stupid enough to think love conquered all. I'd wake up confused, forgetting for half a second that we weren't married anymore, that he'd moved on, that I had too. If you've ever woken up and forgotten your heartbreak, even for a moment, comment, I know that pain. We heal, but the scars remember. The pain medication made everything fuzzy around the edges. I'd stare at the ceiling tiles, counting them, losing track, starting over. A social worker stopped by to ask about family. I gave her my sister's number. She lived 4 states away, but promised to catch the first flight. Anyone else we should contact? The social worker asked gently. I shook my head. There wasn't anyone else. Just me and my small, carefully constructed life, which felt pathetic and perfect at the same time. Up on the 7th floor, Adrian wasn't sleeping. Couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Celeste collapsing, heard the thud of her body hitting the marble floor. Watch her eyes roll back. The doctor spoke in careful, measured tones about heart failure. Advanced stage. Transplant list. Uncertain timeline. Words that sounded like a death sentence delivered with clinical politeness. Her parents stayed close. Silent guardians. They'd always been kind to Adrian, welcoming even, but there was a distance there. He'd always been the architect who married up. The self-made man who'd earned his way into their world. Accepted, yes, but never quite belonging. On his 4th night without sleep, Adrian wandered the hospital halls. Movement felt better than stillness. His legs carried him through corridors, past waiting rooms, down stairwells he had no business being in. That's when he saw the billing office, and something possessed him to go inside. I'd like to cover the costs for a patient, he told the night clerk. Alara Bennett. She was admitted after the storm. The clerk looked confused. Are you family? No, just someone who wants to help. They set it up through an anonymous donor account. Routed through his company's charitable foundation. Completely untraceable. Every medical bill, every medication, every night in the hospital covered in full. He didn't know why he did it. Couldn't explain it if asked. Maybe guilt. Maybe memory. Maybe the kind of love that doesn't die, just transforms into something else. Something quieter, but no less real. What Adrian didn't know was that Livia had been watching from down the hall. She'd heard everything. Saw him sign the papers. Watched him walk away looking like a ghost who'd just paid off a debt to the living. She filed that information away, too. Some secrets are too heavy to carry, but too dangerous to share. I woke up later that night from a dreamless sleep. My room was dark except for the glow of monitors. Something felt different. The air, maybe, or the silence. Like someone had just left. Like I wasn't quite as alone as I thought. But when I looked around, there was nothing. No one. Just me and the machines keeping track of my healing body. He didn't know I'd live. But he paid like I already mattered again. Type love if you need to know what happens when their paths finally cross. Because what comes next will break your heart and put it back together in the same breath. He walked past my door every night for 6 days straight before he realized it was me. I didn't know that then. Couldn't have guessed. I was too busy learning how to sit up without wanting to scream, how to take 3 steps to the bathroom without feeling like my insides were tearing apart. Recovery is unglamorous. It's sweat and pain and small victories that feel massive. My sister flew in on day 3. She cried when she saw me, then yelled at me for not calling sooner, then cried again. That's love in my family. Loud and messy and completely honest. You could have died, she kept saying like I didn't know. Like I hadn't felt it happen. But I was getting stronger. Slowly. The doctors were pleased with my progress. Talked about discharge in another week or so. Going home to my cottage and my art and my kids who needed me. Adrian's nights had become a ritual of exhaustion and guilt. He'd sit with Celeste until visiting hours ended, then wander the hospital like a man searching for something he couldn't name. The cafeteria, the chapel, random hallways that all looked the same under fluorescent lights. On the 6th night, he took a different route back to the parking garage, past the general recovery wing. That's when he saw the name placard outside room 412. Bennett E. He stopped walking, stared at those letters like they were written in a language he'd forgotten how to read. It couldn't be, wouldn't be, too coincidental, too impossible. But he knew. Somehow he knew. If this moment made your heart stop, share this video right now. Because some stories remind us that silence can be louder than words. Adrian stood outside my door for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. His hand reached for the handle 3 times. 3 times he pulled back. What would he even say? Why did he have to walk back into my life now, when his wife was dying upstairs? Through the small window in the door, he could see me sleeping, pale, bruised, and 4 running from my arm, hair tangled on the pillow, still beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. He didn't go in, but the next morning, he sent something instead. I woke up to find a white magnolia on my bedside table. Single stem, perfect bloom, no card, no note, just a flower sitting there like a ghost from another lifetime. My hand started shaking. Magnolias were our thing. Back when we were young and broke and stupidly in love. Adrian used to bring me one every month on our anniversary. Not roses, not the typical romantic gesture. Magnolias because I once told him they smelled like hope and new beginnings. We'd been married 3 years before he stopped bringing them. Got too busy, too successful, too far away from the boy who remembered small promises. I hadn't seen a magnolia in 7 years. Where did this come from? I asked the morning nurse, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged. Was here when I started my shift. Maybe a friend, but I didn't have friends in this city. I'd left them all behind when I left him. The flowers sat there all day, mocking me with its beauty and its implications. Someone remembered. Someone knew. And there was only one person it could possibly be. Up on the 7th floor, Adrian was drafting a text message he'd never sent. Opening with "I'm sorry" felt too small. Starting with "I saw you" felt too invasive. "I never stopped" felt too honest. So he wrote nothing. Sent nothing. Just paid my bills and left flowers and carried the weight of everything unsaid. Livia watched all of this unfold with the exhausted wisdom of someone who'd seen every version of human drama. She checked on me more than necessary. Made sure I was comfortable. Never mentioned the man upstairs or the mysterious donor cover my costs. Some gifts are better received unknowingly. By day 8, I was walking the halls myself. Physical therapy, building strength. My ribs still hurt like hell, but I could breathe deeper. Move further. The discharge papers were being prepared. I was going home soon, back to my real life. Away from whatever ghost was leaving me magnolias like breadcrumbs to a past I'd worked so hard to escape. That's when Livia pulled me aside. "Can I tell you something?" she asked, her voice low and careful. "Not as your nurse, just as someone who's seen too much to stay quiet." My stomach dropped. "What?" "There's a man upstairs. His wife is in heart failure. Critical condition. He's been here every day since the storm." She paused, weighing her words. "His name is Adrian Crane." The floor tilted. My vision blurred at the edges. "He's the one," Livia continued softly. "The anonymous donor. The flowers. All of it." I couldn't breathe. The air in the hallway suddenly felt too thin, too hot, too impossible. He gave me back everything except himself. Comment peace over possession. If you've ever loved someone enough to let them go. Chapter 7 will show you why some endings are really beginnings. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My brain spun in circles, chasing questions that had no good answers. Why now? Why here? Why anything? The magnolias sat on my table like evidence in a crime I didn't commit. I wanted to throw it away. Wanted to keep it forever. Wanted to march upstairs and demand explanations. Wanted to run home and pretend I never knew. Instead, I just stared at the ceiling and counted heartbeats. Morning came with no resolution. Just more pain medication and another physical therapy session where I pretended to focus while my thoughts stayed 3 floors up with a man I promised myself I was over. "You're distracted today," my therapist noted, watching me fumble through exercises I'd nailed yesterday. "Just tired," I lied. The truth was too complicated. The truth was I'd spent 3 years building a life without him, and now the universe was testing that foundation with sledgehammers. My sister visited during lunch, brought me real food from outside because hospital meals taste like cardboard mixed with regret. We ate Thai food and pretended everything was normal. "2 more days and you're out of here," she said, smiling. "Back to your cottage. Your art. Your kids." "Yeah, I managed. Can't wait." But my voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. If you've ever felt torn between moving forward and looking back, drop a heart. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is choosing which direction to face. That night, around 11, I made a decision. Maybe it was the pain meds loosening my judgment. Maybe it was the magnolia whispering accusations. Maybe I just needed to see him one more time to confirm that whatever weed had was really, truly dead. I grabbed my 4-pole and started walking. Slowly, carefully, each step a negotiation with my broken ribs. The hospital at night is a different world. Quieter, shadows longer. Fewer people to question why a patient is wandering halls she has no business being in. I found a cardiac wing, found a family waiting area. And there he was. Adrian sat alone on an uncomfortable-looking couch, head in his hands, still wearing yesterday's clothes. He looked destroyed, hollowed out, like grief had already claimed him even though his wife was still breathing. I should have turned around, should have walked away, should have protected the peace I'd worked so hard to build. Instead, I stood there like an idiot, staring at the man I'd once promised forever to. He must have felt my eyes on him because he looked up, and the moment our gazes locked, the entire world stopped spinning. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. His face went through a dozen emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, something that might have been hope or might have been horror. Hard to tell. "Alara," he whispered. My name sounded like a prayer and a curse at the same time. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. What do you say to someone who ruined you and saved you in the same breath? Who left you behind but never really let you go? "You're here," he said stupidly, standing up too fast. "You're actually here. Car accident," I managed. "The storm." "I know. I found out. I saw your name, and I just—" He ran his hand through his hair. That old gesture I'd forgotten I remembered. "Are you okay?" "Getting there." My voice sounded stronger than I felt. "You?" He laughed. Actually laughed. but it was the saddest sound I'd ever heard. Not even close. We stood there in that awful waiting room with its terrible coffee and its magazines from 2023, and for a moment, we weren't the people we'd become. Just two kids who'd once eaten ramen and planned futures neither of us could have predicted. "The Magnolia," I said finally. "That was you." Not a question. A statement. He nodded. I remembered. That you loved them. That they meant something. They did. Once. And the bills. I know about those two. His eyes widened slightly. "Livia." She thought I should know. I didn't do it for recognition. I just wanted to help. Needed to. After everything He stopped. Started over. "You didn't deserve any of this. The accident. The costs. None of it. And your wife." I asked, even though I didn't want to know. Livia mentioned she's critical. The pain that crossed his face was so raw, I almost looked away. "Heart failure. Advanced stage. They're talking transplants and timelines and percentages that keep getting worse." His voice cracked. "I'm losing her, Alara. And there's nothing I could do except watch it happen." I should have felt vindicated. Should have felt some small satisfaction that his perfect life with his perfect wife was crumbling. Karma coming full circle. But I didn't. I just felt sad. For him. For her. For all of us. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. "I really am." "Are you?" He looked at me with eyes that held too many questions. "After everything? After how I treated you? How I let you walk away?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because despite everything, I don't want you to hurt like this." And that's when something shifted. Some invisible weight between us redistributing itself. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe understanding. Maybe the first step toward peace. He took a step toward me, then stopped, remembering himself. Remembering where we were. Who we were. All the reasons this moment couldn't mean what it felt like it meant. "I drafted 100 messages," he admitted quietly. "Never sent a single one. Didn't think I had the right." "You didn't," I agreed. "But you sent flowers instead. And that was enough." A nurse appeared then, calling his name. Time for updates. Time to go back to reality. To his dying wife and his falling apart life. "I should go," he said, but didn't move. "Yeah," I agreed, but stayed put. "Alara." "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't say anything we'll both regret. Just go be with her. She needs you." He nodded, turned to leave, then looked back one more time. "For what it's worth, walking away from you was the biggest mistake of my life. And I've made a lot of them." Then he was gone, and I was alone in a waiting room that suddenly felt too big and too empty. I made my way back downstairs, each step heavier than the last. Climbed into bed, stared at the Magnolia. And somewhere above me, Adrian sat beside his wife's bed, holding her hand, drowning in regrets that came too late to change anything. He didn't walk in, but love did. I felt that, if this chapter hit different. More is coming, and I promise you won't be ready for what happens next. 2 days before my discharge, everything fell apart upstairs. Celeste's heart stopped at 4 in the morning. Code blue. Crash cart. Doctors and nurses flooding the room like a choreographed emergency. Adrian pushed into the hallway, watching through glass as they shocked her chest once, twice, 3 times. She came back. Barely. But she came back. I heard about it through the hospital grapevine. News travels fast when someone almost dies. Especially when that someone is married to Adrian Crane and the hospital wing is named after her grandfather. I should have stayed out of it. Should have focused on my own recovery and my impending discharge. Should have let the past stay buried where I'd carefully placed it 3 years ago. But I couldn't stop thinking about him, about that broken look on his face, about how some pain is too big to carry alone. So I did something stupid. I asked Livia to give him a message. Tell him I'm praying for her. For both of them. Livia looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "You sure about that?" "No," I admitted. "But tell him anyway." She delivered the message during her shift change. Found Adrian in the hallway, probably on his 50th lap of pacing. Pulled him aside and repeated my words exactly. "According to Livia," he cried. Just stood there in that hospital corridor and let tears run down his face like he'd been holding them back for years. If you've ever loved someone enough to let them go, comment peace over possession. Let's make this our reminder. My last night in the hospital was quiet. My sister had flown back home, promising to return in 2 weeks to check on me. My discharge papers were signed. My ride home arranged. Everything was set. I was painting. Actual painting. I'd asked a volunteer to bring me a small canvas and some cheap acrylics from the gift shop. Nothing fancy, just something to occupy my hands and quiet my mind. I painted magnolias, white and perfect and blooming against a dark background. Couldn't help myself. Around 9, there was a soft knock on my door. I assumed it was a nurse doing final checks. It wasn't. Adrian stood in the doorway, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Probably hadn't. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I should have said no. Should have protected the boundaries I'd built. Should have remembered that he wasn't mine to comfort anymore. "Okay," I said instead. He walked in slowly, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. Saw the painting. Stopped dead. "You're still painting," he said, something like wonder in his voice. "It helps. With everything. The Art Therapy Center. Livia told me about it. About what you built." He looked at me then, really looked. "You're amazing, Alara. You always were." "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't do that. Not now." "Do what?" "Rewrite history. We both know how it ended. Why it ended." He flinched, but didn't argue. Just moved closer to the bed, keeping respectful distance. "She's stable," he said after a moment. "Celeste. They've moved her higher on the transplant list. There's hope. Maybe. That's good. I'm glad." "Are you?" He studied my face like he was searching for lies. "Because you'd have every right not to be." I meant what I said. I don't want you to hurt like this. I set down my paintbrush. What we had, what we lost, that's separate. Your pain now is real. And I'm not cruel enough to wish more suffering on anyone. Even me? Even after I chose work over you? Ambition over us? After I let you believe you weren't enough, when the truth was I wasn't man enough to deserve you. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy and impossible to take back. "Adrian." "No, let me say this. Please." He sat down in the visitor's chair, elbows on knees, head bowed. I was so focused on building something impressive that I forgot to appreciate what I already had. "You supported every dream, every late night, every risk. And I repaid you by becoming a stranger in my own marriage. I know. I didn't cheat. I need you to know that. I never physically touched anyone else. But emotionally," he laughed bitterly, "I checked out years before you left. And you deserved better than a ghost wearing a wedding ring." Tears stung my eyes. I'd waited years to hear this. Years to have him acknowledge the slow death of us. And now that he was saying it, all I felt was tired. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "What's the point?" "Because I've been watching Celeste fade, and all I can think about is you. How you faded too, right in front of me, and I was too blind to see it. Too selfish to care." He looked up, eyes wet. "I'm terrified of making the same mistakes. Of being too late again. You love her." "I do. Not the way I loved you. Different, but real." "Then be better for her than you were for me," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Learn from what you lost. Don't repeat it. Is that forgiveness?" "It's release," I corrected. "For both of us. I can't carry this anger anymore. And you can't fix the past. We can only move forward." He stood up, crossed to my bedside. For a moment, I thought he might try to hug me or take my hand. Instead, he just stood there, close enough to touch, but keeping that final distance. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me," he said softly. "And losing you taught me the cost of taking love for granted. I'll never make that mistake again." "Good," I whispered. "She's lucky to have the version of you that learned that lesson." He nodded, turned to leave. Paused at the door. "The Art Center. I've arranged for an anonymous endowment. Substantial enough to expand operations. Hire full-time staff, whatever you need. It'll come through a trust called Magnolia. You'll receive the paperwork next week." My breath caught. "Adrian, I can't. You're not taking anything from me. I'm investing in something that matters. In someone who's changing lives. Let me do this one right thing." Then he was gone, leaving behind the scent of expensive cologne and expensive regrets. I looked at my painting, at the magnolias blooming in impossible darkness. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something shift. Not closure exactly, but something close. Their story ended in silence. But her new beginning had just started. Drop Chapter 9, if you're ready for the final turn. Because what happens in the next chapter will redefine everything you thought you knew about endings. The night before my discharge, the storm returned. Not weather this time. Worse. The kind of storm that happens in hospital rooms when machines start screaming and medical teams sprint down hallways and time becomes the enemy everyone's fighting. Celeste's heart stopped again. For real this time. No coming back. No miraculous save. I heard the chaos from 3 floors down. Code alerts over intercoms. Running footsteps. That particular silence that follows failed resuscitation attempts. By dawn, she was gone. I learned about it from Livia during her morning rounds. She looked exhausted. The kind of tired that comes from watching death win despite everyone's best efforts. His wife passed during the night, she said quietly, checking my vitals with mechanical precision. Thought you'd want to know. My hands went numb. How is he? How do you think? She didn't mean it harshly. Just honestly. He's shattered. I spent the day in a fog. Went through discharge procedures. Signed papers. Collected my belongings. But my mind was upstairs with a man I'd once loved, watching him experience the kind of loss that rewrites you at a cellular level. My cottage felt strange when I finally got home. Too quiet. Too normal. Like the world should have changed while I was gone, but had the audacity to stay exactly the same. I tried to settle in, try to focus on recovery, but my mind kept drifting back to that hospital, to Adrian sitting in an empty room beside an empty bed, to grief that comes too fast and stays too long. 3 days later, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. Adrian's careful architect's print, every letter precise and measured. If you know what it's like to survive heartbreak and still wish them peace, hit like. You're part of something powerful. I almost didn't open it. Almost threw it away unread. Self-preservation screaming at me to protect the peace I'd just started building again. But curiosity won. It always does. The letter was short. 2 pages. Every word probably agonized over. Alara, it began. I don't know if you'll read this. Maybe you'll throw it away unopened, and you'd have every right. But I need to write it anyway. Need to say things I should have said years ago, but was too proud or too scared or too stupid to admit. Celeste died 3 nights ago. The funeral is tomorrow. I'm writing this at 3 a.m. because sleep feels impossible and silence feels worse. And the only person I want to talk to is you. Not because I expect anything. Not because I think we have a future. But because you're the only one who knows the worst parts of me and might understand why I'm falling apart. I loved her. I need you to know that. What Celeste and I had was real. Different from us, quieter maybe, but genuine. And losing her feels like having my chest carved open with dull instruments. But here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. The thing that's eating me alive. I'm grieving her, but I'm also grieving us. The version of us that could have survived if I'd been better. Smarter. Less obsessed with proving something to people whose opinions don't matter. You leaving was the wake-up call I needed, but refused to hear. I told myself you'd understand eventually. That you'd see why I had to work so hard, sacrifice so much. That success would make it all worth it. But success is lonely. And impressive achievements mean nothing when you're sitting alone in a hospital room watching someone die and realizing you're surrounded by acquaintances but no real friends. No real connection. You were my connection, my home, and I traded you for ambition and square footage and a life that looks perfect in photographs but feels empty in reality. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Don't even know if I deserve the opportunity to ask. I'm just saying I'm sorry for the neglect, for the slow fade, for letting you believe you weren't enough when you were everything. The endowment is real. The Magnolia Trust is yours, no strings attached. Build something beautiful with it. Help more kids. Expand. Thrive. You deserve every good thing. Thank you for the prayers, for seeing me at my worst, and choosing compassion over vindication, for teaching me, even now, what grace actually looks like. I hope your life is everything you wanted it to be. I hope you find someone who cherishes you the way I should have. I hope you paint 1,000 sunrises and never think of me without smiling at who you've become. Once broken, now whole. That's you, Alara. You always were. Take care of yourself. Adrian. I read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer I probably wouldn't open again for years. That night, I painted. Not magnolias this time. Sunrise. Orange and gold and pink bleeding across canvas like hope looks when it's just waking up. And somewhere across the city, Adrian buried his wife and his regrets in the same grave, learning too late that some lessons cost everything to understand. Lightning split the sky outside my window. Not a real storm, just heat lightning. Flash and drama with no real substance. Like us, I thought. Beautiful while it lasted. Destructive when it ended. But ultimately just a moment in time. We'd been 2 people who loved each other but couldn't save each other. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that was enough. Their story ended in silence. But her new beginning had just started. Comment, I rise in silence if Alara's strength moved you. Someone scrolling needs to see that strength today. Chapter 10 is the finale, and I promise it'll leave you breathless. 6 months later, I stood in front of a canvas watching sunrise paint the ocean gold. The art center had expanded. 3 new rooms, 5 additional staff members. Programs running 6 days a week now instead of 3. The Magnolia Trust made it all possible. Every dollar carefully documented and transparently spent. I'd sent 1 thank you card to the Trust's legal address. Professional, grateful, no personal details. He never responded. I didn't expect him to. Some gifts are meant to be given in silence and received the same way. Marcus, the kid who used to paint only in gray, had just gotten accepted to a summer art intensive upstate. His mom cried when she told me. So did I. That's what healing looks like. Small victories that feel massive. Sophia was painting portraits now. Real faces with real smiles. The flames were gone, replaced by people she loved. Her grandmother, her teacher, me. You look happy, she said one afternoon, studying me with the brutal honesty only kids have. Like actually happy, not pretend happy. I am, I realized. I really am. And it was true. Not the delirious joy of new love or the manic happiness of running from pain. Just quiet contentment. The kind of peace that comes from knowing exactly who you are and being okay with it. I hadn't heard from Adrian since the letter. Didn't look for news about him. Didn't check his social media or ask mutual acquaintances for updates. I'd released him completely, and in doing so, I'd freed myself. If you believe peace is the greatest revenge, subscribe for more stories where silence wins louder than words. Spring turned to summer. The cottage got new paint. I adopted a rescue dog named Charlie who had anxiety issues and loved sleeping at the foot of my bed. My sister visited monthly. Life became routine in the best possible way. Then one morning, working at the center, I looked up to find an envelope on my desk. Hand-delivered, according to the volunteer who'd accepted it. No stamp, just my name. Inside was a gallery invitation. New architectural photography exhibit downtown. Spaces of grace, finding beauty in rebuilding. The photographer's name made my breath catch. Adrian Crane. There was a handwritten note paper-clipped to the invitation. You don't have to come. Won't be offended if you don't. But I learned from the best that art heals what words can't touch. This is me trying to heal. Thought you might want to see. No pressure. No expectations. Just an invitation. Ugh. I almost didn't go. Almost talked myself out of it a dozen times. But curiosity won again, and maybe something else. Maybe the need to see how his story had continued after ours ended. The gallery was small but elegant. Exposed brick and careful lighting and photographs that stopped me in my tracks. They weren't what I expected. Not architectural showcases or corporate buildings. Instead, he'd photographed spaces in transition. Abandoned houses being renovated. Broken structures finding new purpose. Churches becoming community centers. Warehouses transforming into art studios. Each photo was titled with a simple phrase. What was? What is? What could be? The final piece in the collection made my vision blur. It was my art center. My cottage. The beach where I walked Charlie every morning. All photographed with such care and tenderness, it felt like looking at love made visible. The title, Where Magnolias Grow. You came. I turned. Adrian stood a few feet away, looking different. Thinner. Older. But also somehow lighter. Like he'd set down weight he'd been carrying too long. I managed. The work is beautiful. Thank you. It's been therapeutic. Seeing broken things become whole again. He glanced at the photographs, then back at me. You look good. Happy. I am. You, getting there. Slowly. Grief is weird. Some days I can breathe. Others I can't. We stood in comfortable silence. Two people who'd survived each other and somehow come out better for it. I'm not here to complicate your life, he said quietly, or to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that seeing you again, even in that horrible hospital, it reminded me that people can change, can heal, can become better versions of themselves. We both did that, I said, just separately. Yeah, he smiled, sad but genuine. Separately. Someone called his name. Gallery duties. He needed to mingle, talk to potential buyers, play the part. I should go, I said. Alara. He caught my hand. Gentle. Brief. Thank you. For everything. For the past. For the lesson. For existing in the world and making it better. You're welcome. And Adrian, I squeezed his hand once. I'm proud of you. For this. For choosing to heal instead of hide. Then I left. Walked out into afternoon sunshine and felt nothing but peace. No regret. No what-ifs. No viteraftertaste. Just gratitude for a love that taught me everything, including when to walk away. Once broken, now whole. Once forgotten, now free. Once his, now hers. Her life. Her peace. Her story. 6 months later, I received one final letter. Short. Sweet. Final. Alara, I'm moving. Fresh, start somewhere new. Taking only what matters. Leaving everything else behind, including ghosts I've carried too long. I heard your center got a massive grant. I am glad. Those kids are lucky to have you. The world is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have known you, even briefly, even badly. Be well. Be happy. Be exactly who you are. With love and gratitude for the woman who taught me that letting go is sometimes the greatest act of love. Hey, I folded the letter, placed it with the first one, and closed the drawer. Then I went to the beach with Charlie and painted the sunrise and felt completely, perfectly whole. This isn't just her story. It's ours. Because we rise quietly and completely. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Because next week, we're bringing you another powerful love story that will remind you why the strongest people are the ones who choose peace over revenge. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what Alara's journey meant to you. Your words might inspire someone who needs to hear that walking away is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. We rise in silence. Together.